Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's session. So, our topic for
Good.
today is IPO and related concepts. It's a very interesting topic, and I surely hope that you all are also very much interested in learning about IPOs. Since past few months we have been hearing about various IPOs coming up, the Paytm, Nika IPO, data analytics. We all have heard about that. So, before we start with the session, I'll just like to share my screen. So this is the practice area of CAM, as you all can see. So they have a full dedicated wing to capital markets. Now, interesting thing to note over here is if you see their standout deals in this. So they were, involved in the Zomato IPO, one of the largest IPOs. And of course, the first book built offer, even CAM was involved over there. Let's just have a look at JDs in relation, to IPOs, which kind of JDs you will find. So this is assistant manager for legal. If you see over here, they have, review of corporate structure and constitutional documents of the company in relation to listing and IPOs. So this is one. Of course, it will always involve other corporate opportunities with it. So this is one JD. And if you look over here, this is for associate consultant at KPMG India, Gurgaon. So even, they have one to assist them with IPOs and other acquisition filings for both domestic and cross-border transactions. So these were your JDs for IPO. Now, quickly, we can have the welcome poll for you all. So I'm launching the welcome poll, and I would request every one of you to please put in your responses. Many of you are yet to respond. Please quickly put in your responses so that we move ahead with our session today. Thank you. So our session for today would be taken by Sarthak. Sarthak, you can proceed with your session.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Komal. Just a second. Share my screen. Yeah. I hope my screen is visible, everyone.
It is visible.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much, Komal, for introducing the topic for today's class. The IPO, the term IPO has been the buzzword for quite some time, especially during this last year, during 2021. Because if you look at 2020, the markets were completely hit by the pandemic, and a lot of most issuers were going for a qualified institutional placement as opposed to a full-fledged IPO, because that was the need of the hour, and that is what was happening. And as Komal correctly pointed out, IPO and IPO deal is one of the many transactions that you would generally work as a capital markets lawyer, as a capital markets associate with any firm that you join, right? So most firms have a dedicated capital markets team, but some firms also have like they have a transactional team which also takes up capital markets on the side. So as legal counsel, before we would proceed any further, as legal counsels, what would you be expected as an associate, as a capital markets lawyer, is that you can either end up representing the issuing company, the issuer, or you would represent the book running lead managers, which are the merchant bankers or the investment bankers. You'll be either legal counsel to them or to the issuer or to the book running lead managers, and you'll be called as domestic legal counsels. If of course, if you're working on an IPO launch here in India, then you'll be called as the domestic legal counsel, and your name, as in the name of the firm and everything, will be mentioned in the offer document as well, right? So before we begin, I just quickly want to sort of put it out there that the IPO process in itself, it's very sometimes it's difficult to pack it all in one class. I'll try my very best to sort of pack it all in today's class. If I do miss out on something, don't worry, you can always reach out to me on my email, and lots of you have all, they all they reach out to me. I answer to them on emails and everything. So I'll do that in case I miss out something. What we would be focusing here more is not on the specific regulations or that that is always available to you. You can open the ICDR, LODR. I'll tell you where to look, and you can always go and read up that. But on the very outset, before you even join the firm, what nobody teaches you as a capital markets lawyer is what are the different stages to an IPO. That is what is my intention to deliver during this session. So let's get into it. So what is an IPO, right? So before we proceed any further, any one of you quickly tell me what is an IPO, and also what is important, in which market does an IPO happen? What kind of market? So there's a primary market.
There's a initial public offering.
Yes, sir. But what is a IPO? As in, what does it consist of? I mean, in which market does it happen? Primary market or a secondary market?
Primary market.
Correct. So, an initial public offering is when a company is inviting the public. It is a public issue by all means. The issuing company is inviting the members of the public to invest in the company and become shareholders in the company. It is a method to, it is number one, a method to sort of raise capital from the securities market for the issuing company, and also to get listed. It is which is why you will very often hear this term, taking the company public. Primary market. Thank you, everyone. Jui and Sarvesh, thank you. So very often you'll hear this term, as opposed to an IPO, you'll hear this term called taking the company public. That is referring to a initial public offering. Now, an IPO can either be a fresh issue of shares, right? Excuse me. Or it can be offer of sale of shares of existing shareholders, or it can be a combination of both. It can be partly fresh issue, it can be partly offer for sale, right? Or it can be solely offer for sale or solely fresh issue of shares, right? So when you talk about fresh issue of shares, it is basically you are issuing fresh equity, fresh shares for the public to invest in, right? So if it is offer for sales, then you have existing shareholders. You're an unlisted company, but you do have shareholders, right? And you're a listed company and you have shareholders, and you want to offer those very shares for a sale to the public, right? So before we get into the nitty-gritties of an IPO process, and please stop me if I'm going, if I tend to go very fast or something, please stop me, and I'll slow down. So before we get into the nitty-gritties of an initial public offering, broadly, this is the flow. This is the life cycle of an IPO. First, you file the offer document in the prescribed format under ICDR before the Securities Exchange Board of India and the Registrar of Companies. Then, as the issuing company, you receive observations from these regulatory authorities, right? We'll talk about what are these observations, how, when can your offer document be rejected also. Okay. After complying with, so accordingly, you then revise your offer document. You sort of comply with those observations. You reply to them. You make those rectifications, and you again resubmit the offer document. Now, post the successful completion of the offer, the shares of the company are traded in the stock exchange where the shares are listed. Now, what is this called? After when the shares are getting traded, in which market it will be traded then? Once the IPO is completed, in which market will it be traded? Anyone? Sir, not you. Not you, sir. Not you. Anybody else? You can. In the second, correct, Joey. In the Sarvesh, Joey, correct. Nimisha, stock exchanges, yes, it will be listed on stock exchanges, Mansi, but the trading of shares happens in the secondary market, right? Once the shares are listed, the trading happens in the secondary market. So very good, Nimisha, Joey, and Sarvesh, Vipul sir, everyone, great. So just a second. Now, what is the eligibility criteria before we get into the process? Sure, Manyata. Can I take some? So, without going into very detail, primary market is when the shares are initially issued and where they're before when they're listed, right? So that is what primary market is. Or when a company goes for an initial public offering, that is a primary market. It goes for in the primary market. The shares are not listed on the stock exchange yet. So when you go to raise money in the primary market through equity, you are directly inviting like the public to invest in your company, to raise money, to raise capital. So that is called the primary securities market. Before your shares, like without going into extreme complete details of it, that is where your that is called the primary market. The secondary market is once your shares are listed in the stock exchange and when they are traded by existing, like, so IPO ho gaya. IPO के बाद your shares are allotted to the members of the public, to shareholders. Now these shareholders, they start trading your shares, like they sell your shares. Somebody else will buy, some other person will buy your some other retail investor will buy your shares. So that is the secondary market. So to put it very neatly, where the initial listing and everything that happens, that's the primary market as far as securities market is concerned. And where the trades happen, the trade of these securities, that is the secondary market. Can you show the sure? Is this the one? Okay. Just let me know when I can change. Thank you. So what is before we get into the different details of how an IPO, what a process works, what is the life cycle, what are the eligibility requirements, which companies can go for an initial public offering. Now the company, as per ICDR, the company should at least have a 3 crore in net tangible asset in the previous 3 years. It is always the last 3 years that we take. I think for COVID, for certain companies, that the 3-year period was brought down to I think 2 years or something like that, or 1 year maybe. But excuse me, but for it's always according to IND, like accounting standards, and ICDR, it is always the last 3 years financial statements that we look at. Out of this 3 crore amount, not more than 50% should be cash or cash equivalent, like money in an account, cash receivable, or investment accounts. However, if the IPO is being made through offer for sale, the restriction on money of 50% on monetary assets is not applicable, right? So out of this 3 crore of net tangible assets, 50% it should be in liquid cash form, right? It should be either held in bank or something like that, or cash equivalent, something which can be liquidated immediately. Not so 50% should be in a form which can be immediately liquidated, in the form of, like, it should be in cash, hard cash, or cash equivalent, right? And the other 50% could be in equity, whatever it is, like equity shareholding, whatever it is. That is how the net tangible asset of 3 crore, that requirement is to be met. But if the IPO is being made through an offer for sale, this is solely applicable. The first half is applicable to a fresh issue. But if you are looking at this is for fresh issue and a combined offer. If you are looking solely an offer for sale, sorry, your mic is on, Malik. Yes. So yeah, so if you're going for an offer for sale, then the restriction of 50% of monetary assets is not applicable, right? Now the company should have a net worth of at least 1 crore rupees in the previous 3 years. So 3 crores in net tangible asset, 1 crore rupees worth of net worth at least. The company should have an average operating profit of at least 15 crores minus the taxation in each of the 3 years among the previous 5 years.
Excuse me, sir.
Sure. Yeah.
So what is the meaning of offer through sale?
Offer for sale. Just a second, Purna, I'm answering that question. Ruchir, so to quickly answer your question, eligibility criteria is specified in the ICDR, and it is also separately mentioned. So it is given in the SEBI ICDR regulations. There are other orders which are like when the eligibility criteria is amended, changed from time to time. Along with that, there are NSE circulars also on the eligibility criteria. Like stock exchanges also have that, like NSE, BSE also have their separate eligibility criteria. So if you are approaching NSE to get listed, It might be different if you're approaching the BSE to get listed. Like there are usually they are more or less the same, and they're mostly in line with what SEBI ICDR has already given. There might be few changes here and there. Like you can, check that. So Purna, sorry, you were asking offer for sale. Offer for sale is when the existing shareholders, the shares of the existing shareholders of the company are offered for sale to the other retail investors through an IPO. That is an offer for sale.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So if the company has taken a new name, the average operating profit of at least 15 crores in each of the 3 years among the previous 5 years, if the company has taken a new name, then 50% of the total revenue earned in the previous 1 year should have come from activity performed by the company after assuming the new name. The total value of the issue size of the IPO by the company should not be more than 5 times the net worth of the company before the issue of the IPO. Then this is what I was talking about, Purna. Ruchir. In terms of additional like eligibility requirements, the paid up equity capital of the applicant should not be less than 10 crores, and the capitalization of the applicant's equity shall not be less than 25 crores. Right. For this purpose, the post issue paid up equity capital for which listing is short shall be taken into account, and this is just the explanation. I don't want to. Do you want me to explain the explanations also?
No.
Sir,
Okay.
sir,
Sorry. Yeah.
can you just please
Manya.
explain the highlighted part again?
Sure. The paid up equity capital of the Manyata, can I do something? Can I, if you can just put it in the chat box, can I take this towards the end?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Because there's a lot to cover, and so my only concern is that we might end up, not being able to cover. So I'll take up that question.
I'll just put it in the chat box.
Put it in the chat box. I'll take it up towards the end. Right. Just a second also. Sorry. So yeah. So yeah, Manita. Okay. So the conditions again. So the issuer should adhere to the conditions like we just discussed. Precedent to listing from the SCRA. So Companies Act. This is for for an IPO, for in terms of eligibility for IPO, that's the eligibility under SEBI ICDR is explicitly given. In terms of listing on stock exchanges also, the criteria, the eligibility criteria have been given under SCRA, under Companies Act 2013, under SEBI Act 1922, and any other rules or regulations which are formed ancillary to it. Right. So in terms of a legal framework, these are the statutes along with SEBI ICDR and LODR also that we would need to refer from time to time. Then at least 3 years of track record of either the applicant, at least in the before an issuer goes for an IPO, he or like that company should at least should not have applied for a listing in the last 3 years, right? The promoters of promoting company should not be incorporated in So at least in the 3 years of there should be a track record of the applicant not seeking listing, and the promoters and the promoting company, whether it is incorporated in or outside of India within the past 3 years, that track record has to be also seen. Partnership firm, and subsequently whether it was a partnership firm before it became a company, not in existence as a company for 3 years. So basically you will have to see these things, like whether in the past 3 years the applicant had sought a listing or not. If it sought a listing, why was it rejected? Why it did not go through? Then the promoters and the promoting company, whether they were incorporated in India or they were incorporated outside in India within the past 3 years, that has to be taken into account. Whether it was a partnership firm first, which was subsequently converted into a company, that is also to be taken into account. The test here is that whether or not the entity, the issuer, which is going for an issue right now for an IPO, whether or not it was a company from the start or not, that is to be examined, right? So then if at all, if it so happened that it was converted from a partnership firm, then it has to comply with the eligibility conditions, after which it will become eligible for an IPO. For this purpose, the applicant of the promoting company shall submit annual reports of the 3 preceding financial years to NSE, and also provide a certificate of exchange in respect to the stock exchange in respect of the following. The company, so basically you will tell them that there are no SARFAESI or no insolvency proceedings like against the company. The company has not received any winding up petition. The net worth of the company should be positive, provided this criteria is not applicable to the company whose proposed issue size is more than rupees 500 crores. So just quickly wanted to check with you guys, what is the net tangible asset requirement for a company to go for an IPO?
So 3 crores.
Correct. And what is the net worth requirement?
So 1 crore per year.
Correct. Correct. Everyone. Very good. Very good. Yeah. So these are the things that have to be taken care of in terms of meeting eligibility criteria. And it's like I said, it's always the past 3 financial years that we are looking at. So net worth in terms of, when interpreting net worth, it has to be defined. It has to be interpreted in terms of as defined under SEBI ICDR. Promoters need 1 or more persons with minimum 3 years of experience of each of them in the same line of business, and shall be holding at least 20% of the post-equity share capital individually or separately. This is a mandatory requirement. So when ICDR says shall be, so it is a mandatory requirement for the promoter shareholding contribution to be 20% of the post-issue equity share capital. Either it could be individually 20%, or it could be like severally 20%. Earlier, there's a lock-in period, like the promoters could not sell their post the issue being completed. The promoters could not sell or transfer their shares for a period of 3 years. Right now, it has been brought down to 18 months. In I think August 2021, SEBI came up with a new circular. If I find it, I'll send it to you guys. But it was all over the news that this has been for just adding it over here for where there were promoters where there were clearly identifiable promoters. For them, the lock-in period was made 18 months and for companies where there were no identifiable promoters, it was made 6 months. The lock-in period for other shareholders was made for 6 months, if I'm not wrong. So there's that circular out there. You can all Google it up. It was in August 2021. I think 6th or 7th August 2021. So the applicant, the issuing company which is desirous of listing a security should satisfy the stock exchange about the following things. This is not actually that much relevant. So in terms of eligibility criteria, this is much more relevant. This is basically whether or not they plan to have a redressal mechanism for investor grievance or not, and details of any pending investor grievances against the issuer, right? If they have gone for a private placement or a rights issue or something like that. So these are the things that should also be kept in mind. I'm just skipping this slide also, again, not relevant to the discussion now. What is yes? This is where our real concept actually starts. So, what is the document that is to be filed for an IPO? What is the first document that we file? It's right here. I've written it right here. Juhi, but what kind of offer document? But what is it? Yes, DRHP. Very good, Shivansh. So, like Shivansh currently pointed it out, it is called a draft red herring prospectus. That is the very first document in terms of. So, pehle, there is a DRHP which is filed. Then, uske baad there comes a red herring prospectus. Then, finally, you file the final prospectus. Okay. So, so before the DRHP is filed, it is before it is filed with SEBI and ROC for their observations. So what happens? So how does the IPO process start? I'll tell you how does it start. Before, we can all read here appointment of BRLMs and legal counsels, correct? But it starts even before that, right? Where does it start? Like, can anybody tell me when a company decides to go for do anything, what is the first thing that is to be done? When Purna?
Sir, a board meeting?
Yes, a board meeting and a board resolution. So ideally what happens in most companies, yes, board meeting. So ideally what happens in most companies, if an issuer is planning to go for an IPO, the board, because the board does not have they may or may not have a lot of time on their hands to supervise, oversee the IPO process from time to time. So what happens is that they constitute a IPO committee. Initial public offering committee, which is constituted of a few directors of the board, the CA, maybe the CFO, CEO, any other KMP, maybe the company secretary, people like that, chartered accountant, CS. It's called an IPO committee, and so all the powers are delegated. Like most of the powers are delegated to this IPO committee. So a board resolution is definitely passed that the company is planning to go for a IPO. Now before you plan to go for an IPO, you need to basically appoint a BRLM, which is a book running lead manager, or an investment banker, or as under SEBI, under the SEBI merchant banker regulations, it is a category 1 merchant banker. That is what a BRLM is all about. So a BRLM, so what is a BRLM? Does anybody have an idea what do merchant bankers, book running lead managers, what do they do? Why do you need a book manager? Sorry? Somebody said something. I lost your voice.
No,
What
sir.
is the full form of BRLMs?
Yes, BRLM is book running lead manager. Book running lead manager. Right. Somebody has written something. They prepare prospectus, not exactly. Ideally, they should, but they never do. Ascertaining the issue price, they do help in that. Okay. So what BRMs ideally do, if anybody asks you, is they basically manage the entire. Yes, due diligence they do, but all in all, they manage the entire offer. It is the BRLMs who are the book running lead managers, the investment bankers, who typically tend to lead the transaction. They lead the offer actually, right, on behalf. So if the issuer wants to go for a IPO, they approach a book running lead manager or an investment banker, and they, on behalf of the issuing company, they manage that issue for a professional fee. So that will be decided, like they sign an agreement with the issuing company that what is the amount of this thing that they'll proceeds they will be allowed. Like it could be 10%, 5%, whatever it is per offer, like for managing the entire issue of the entire amount, entire capital that is raised through an IPO. They will, like the book running lead manager will sort of take that commission. Yeah, 3rd August 2021. So yeah, I remember it was in August, could not remember the date. Yes. So that is what book running lead managers do actually. So it could be depending on the size of the offer, depending on the size of the IPO, or the size of the issuer. It could be only one or two book running lead managers, or it could be more than, it could be multiple. But there would be one book running lead manager who would be coordinating on behalf of all the other. So they will form a syndicate of BRLMs. Actually, it's called a syndicate. They'll sign a syndicate agreement, like all the BRLMs together. So what will be in the agreement is basically the rights and obligations of all the BRLMs. What is the entitlement in terms of commission? How will the profit be shared, and how will be the revenue and commission be shared between all of them? Who will be the lead merchant banker on that offer? So that is what is decided. I'll just give you a very this thing right now. Is that if we go to the SEBI website, there is something called this thing left lead. I'll tell you what is a left lead in terms of a book running lead manager. I'll just quickly open that and show you. So this is how you can go and you can find out all offer documents. You go on public issue, you go for draft offer documents filed with SEBI. So these are all the recent offer documents that we have this thing, like we have seen. So we can look for Zomato, right? So this is Zomato's DRHP. Opening, just a second. The websites are very slow sometimes. So left lead merchant banker is basically, so if you look at the offer document, on the very opening page, on the first page, the the names of all the merchant bankers will be serially like listed. So the name of the merchant banker, which is on the extreme left side of the offer document on the first page, is called the left lead. So that merchant banker is usually the one who coordinates among like with the other on behalf of the other merchant bankers or the other book running lead managers. Why is this not opening? Reload the page. So I have opened so many tabs. Just a second. So you can also find offer documents on BSE, NSE websites, the stock exchanges where they are listed. You can also find offer documents over there. Just a second, guys. Yeah, so now you can see. So can anybody quickly tell me who is the left lead banker on this offer? These are the BRLMs, Kotak Securities.
Kotak Mahindra.
Correct. So Kotak is the left lead on this on this transaction, on this what do you call, on this on this IPO. So you can also see the name of the legal counsel somewhere. Yeah, see. This is how the name of the legal counsels will be also written. This is so Cyril Amarchand and this one with the Indus Law with the domestic legal counsels, and international legal counsel was Latham and Watkins on this offer. Legal counsel to the selling shareholders. So this was, I think, and also it also had an element of offer for sale. So Jay Sagar was also involved. So yeah, this is how it typically looks. Okay, so I'll just go back. So then so that is the first step. The BRLMs are appointed and the legal counsels are also appointed. The legal counsel to the issuer, to the book running lead managers, all of them are actually appointed. Correct. So then there is a kickoff meeting which happens. A kickoff meeting is nothing but it is an all-party meeting. So on an offer, there are different intermediaries who are working. You'll be able to see. I'll tell you. Yeah. So these are the intermediaries that you are basically looking at. So self-certified syndicate banks, then registered brokers, register and share transfer agents, collection and depository participants. All of them are basically working on the offer. So an all-party meeting is where all of these people they meet. Ideally, like they will ideally before the pandemic, this kickoff meeting used to happen in the issuer's office, where they will fix one fine evening or one lunch or something like that. All the parties will come. Maybe the selling shareholders, the promoters, everybody will come, the legal counsels. So the issuer company, somebody will present what is the business of the issuer company, why are they going for this issue and all, how much, when do they plan to open, when do they plan to close, and how much money are they going to raise, how much they're planning to raise, why are they, how much money they're planning to raise, and why are they actually going, why do they want to go for an IPO only, not for any other mode, right? So all of this is discussed during the kickoff call, where the senior management provides an overview of the issuer and its business to the BRLMs and the legal counsels, and the IPO timelines are basically discussed. So then you set up a data room or a VDR, as it is commonly called. A VDR is nothing but a virtual data room, right? So it is a virtual data room. So a virtual data room is nothing. It is a cloud based service basically. So before the before the digital era completely took over all aspects of any transaction or anything, typically for a due diligence, what used to happen is that the legal counsels would be called to the office of the issuing company. They will sit down through like day after day, month after month, and painstakingly go through each and every document in detail to find out one tiny, like a Dropbox, but a little. I'll tell you, it's not even that complicated and everything. So earlier on, like I was saying, before the digital era, like lawyers used to go for a due diligence. You would sit down and basically, go through all documents very painstakingly and find out what is there, what's not there. Then you make a requisition list and all of that. But now what happens is that, and especially this was helpful, very helpful during the pandemic, that you set up a virtual data room, which is a cloud-based, kind of an account or service, and you give access to different people, right? You upload, the issuing company uploads whatever documents it has under different categories, like the MOA, the AOA, maybe the minutes of meetings of different like committees of the board, board meetings, the different committees, all secretarial information, everything, all statutory approvals, licenses. It uploads it, and the lawyers can simply just sit and go through it, right? So, like somebody was asking, what BRLMs do. If you look at ICDR, SEBI ICDR's language, nowhere does it mention that legal counsels have to do due diligence. It says that BRLM should carry out a thorough due diligence and shall satisfy itself that the affairs of the company are in order. So the BRLMs, what they do is that they hire legal counsels to carry out this due diligence exercise. That is where you guys will come in. Also, in terms of drafting the offer document, the BRLMs they don't draft the like offer document per se. What they usually do is they give it to the legal counsels. So it depends who is the drafting counsel. Usually it is it could be divided between both the counsels for the BRLMs and between the issuing company. Like there's one offer document. So it is very important to understand that, unlike in any other transaction or any other deal, in a capital markets transactions, the lawyers are actually not opposing counsels. Though they are called opposing counsels, but they are not, because both of you are working towards the same objective. If you are the legal counsel who's representing the issuing company, and you are working with the BRLM, legal counsel of the merchant banker, right? So ultimately, both your objectives are the same. So what happens is that few chapters the company will take, like the company's counsel will take, right? Few chapters the BRLM's counsel will take, and they will draft. That is how the offer document is. Sometimes it is drafted. All of this are discussed during the kickoff call, and then that's not exactly during the kickoff call, but like subsequent meetings after the kickoff call to finalize on the timelines and the all party meetings and everything, to get the agenda and everything, to clear it out, and also in terms of dividing responsibility. So that is what is also subsequently done. So just wanted to say that legal counsels will help you in drafting offer documents. I'll give you an example of what they can. So there's this section called like other regulatory and statutory disclosures. So these sections are usually sort of drafted by the legal counsel. Right, then there's something called capital structure, right? General information, and then capital structure of the company. So that is where also the legal counsels tend to come in. Sorry. Yes, so which is basically what is the authorized share capital and what is the present offer. All of these are placeholders because this is a DRHP, and the price, like the exact details of the offer would be finalized in the RHP, right? Either in the RHP or in the prospectus, right? So yeah, these are all drafted by the legal counsels. So coming back to our discussion, so preparation of the data room, which is, like I said, there are different data room service providers. There is Merrill One, DataSite Merrill One. There is what more? I can't remember right now. But yeah, so there are multiple like data room service providers. Just a second. Yeah. So commencement of the due diligence exercise. So once you have set up your data room and everything, then your due diligence exercise actually commences, right? So then commencement of due diligence simultaneously with the commencement of drafting of the DRHP. So you are doing it at the same time as legal counsels. You are doing due diligence and simultaneously. So what usually I used to do was, while like when I was working as a capital markets counsel, it used to happen parallelly. Like let's say I am drafting the statutory and other regulatory approval section, then I will do the due diligence required for that. Then I'll sit down and draft that section so that I know what exactly I have to put and what exactly more I have to ask the issuing company. So then the filing of the DRHP happens. So there is something called an issue agreement, which is executed. Not really relevant to the discussion now, but I will explain it sometime later on. Then executed standard certificates are provided by the issuer, its directors, subsidiaries, promoters, promoter group companies, and selling shareholders. And executed comfort letter is also provided by the auditors. So what are the standard certificates that we are talking about? So under the ICDR, there are under, I think, Schedule 6, Part A and Part B, there are different due diligence certificates which the BRLM has to submit before the Securities and Exchange Board of India. Once you as legal counsels, you have completed due diligence, you will tell the BRLMs, you will tell the issuing company what's there, what's not there. On the basis of that, the BRLM goes and submits a standard certificate before the Securities and Exchange Board of India, that's SEBI. So a standard certificate is basically taken that all your affairs are in order, or there are these many things pending against you, or they are not pending. If you're taking it from directors and KMPs and subsidiaries, that you will tell them that basically what you're trying to tell them that there are no there have been no cases of any economic offenses against you. You have not been debarred from the securities, from accessing the securities market in the past 1 or 2 years. You are not willful defaulters, right? So this is what the standard certificates are all about. So that is prepared by the by the legal counsels and given to the BRLM, who ultimately go and submit it before SEBI. So once you have done all of this thing, then you file the DRHP with SEBI along with the due diligence certificate, like we just discussed. So filing of applications to the stock exchange for the in principle listing approval. You need to get an approval from the stock exchanges for listing of securities. That application is filed with them. So then you go for a registration of the IPO. This involves the preparation of the registration statement, then filing reply to the observations that you receive from SEBI. So we just saw here that you are sort of you are filing the offer document, the DRHP, with SEBI, right? So so then what SEBI will do, this is called a confidential filing. This thing is called a confidential filing before SEBI, because SEBI will go through the offer document through the DRHP and they will carefully examine it. It has rarely ever happened that SEBI has not come up with any observations at all. They always come up with some observation or something. It's impossible that SEBI will keep quiet and they'll say no, this is perfect. That has never happened in the history of Indian capital markets, at least. So they'll come up with some observation, then they are given some time. The issuing company is given some time to rectify those observations, right? So then you file reply to the final observations received from SEBI, and then you file an updated red herring prospectus with SEBI and ROC. Then you get once you get a approval on the DRHP, you execute different agreements, which are your escrow agreements, your syndicate agreements. Sorry, somebody's mic is on. Sorry, somebody's mic is on. Could you please switch it off?
Guys, please unmute yourself if you are on unmute.
No, Ruchir, confidential filing is it is when only done with SEBI. The DRHP is on the website. So confidential filing is when the document is only filed with SEBI. It is not. So what you are seeing right now is the DRHP after the taking comments from SEBI and after they have been amended and after the offer document has been accordingly rectified and everything. That is the offer document you are seeing on website of SEBI and NSE and BSE. But I'm telling you, before that goes on the website, there is a small stage, there is an interim period where it is directly filed with SEBI. It is sent on an email or through what registered post, whatever it is to SEBI, and that is a confidential filing. It is only for SEBI. Okay. Arushi, there are a lot of agreements. Syndicate agreement hai, issue agreement hai. There is kya hai uska naam? Escrow agreement ho gaya, all of this. So what I can do is I can explain it in brief towards the end of the session. If I thoda karke, I can explain all of that. Chalega, will that be okay, Arushi? Yeah, because काफी time चला जाएगा otherwise. Let me complete this. I'll explain it to you. ठीक है? Then you file the okay. So once then you sign the updated standard certificates and comfort letter. So standard certificates are basically taken from these people so that they are a backup for the due diligence certificate that you are submitting. कहाँ गया? Where is the due diligence certificate? It was here somewhere, right? So yeah. Yeah, I think it was somewhere here. Anyways, I can't find it right now. But yeah, so a standard certificate is basically a backup for. So if you are submitting a standard, for example, if you are submitting a standard certificate before SEBI, who would submit this standard? Who would submit this? First, tell me, are you able to understand who is submitting this due diligence certificate before SEBI?
BRLM. Sorry, yeah.
Yes, BRLM is submitting before SEBI. So what you're doing is, what you're basically telling SEBI is that my director is fit and proper. Okay, in not so many words, correct? So in order to back that due diligence certificate, you take a standard certificate of confirmation from the director himself, जिसमें ये लिखा होगा कि that you have never been a willful economic defaulter, you have not been charged with any offense amounting to moral turpitude, you have not been involved in any securities market related offense, you have not been barred from accessing the securities market in the past 1 or 2 years, right? So ये सब लिखा होता है उस standard certificate में. That is a backup for this due diligence certificate that you're giving, and that applies to all the entities from whom you are, on whose behalf you are giving this due diligence certificate to SEBI. So yeah. Sorry, Arushi, एक second. Okay, it was on filing of DRHP. So I'll tell you. I'll explain brief में what are those agreements. Then so once the DRHP is filed, then filing of red herring prospectus is done with the registrar of companies and obtaining the ROC's approval. So DRHP you have filed it with SEBI. Now you will file the next level of the document, which is a red herring prospectus, which is filed before the registrar of companies for an approval from them. So basically, these are the sections in an offer document. Why do we need to see this? I'll show it over to you over here. What are the different sections? Yeah. So different section. These are the different sections. एक तो general section हो गया, risk factors. What are the different risks involved with the business, right? Then what is the offer? Then restated financials information, general information about the company, capital structure of the company, about the company. So इसमें ये सब होता है, legal and other information. These are all in terms in according to the material disclosures which have to be made according to SEBI ICDR. Just quickly show you. Sorry. Right. So wait. See, all of this is given: appointment of lead managers, other disclosures and filing of offer documents. So whatever sections and information that you see in the offer document will be according to this part 6. इसमें आपको you'll get everything. What disclosures have to be made according to what, filing of draft offer document and offer document. Okay, so I don't want to bore you with. So this is the due diligence certificate that I was talking about. All of this. So you can just go through ICDR part 6 and you'll be able to see what are those disclosures, what is to be put in the offer document, right? So is that okay? Will you be able to, please go through ICDR after the class? Guys, yes, no?
You can type a yes or no in the chat
Okay.
box.
Great. Okay. So you know what to look for now. So it's all, so actually SEBI has left very little to imagination. So in terms of what should be there, what should be also there on the covering page of the offer document, that is what they have also said. I think if I'm not wrong, right, see, this is how detailed SEBI has gone into. So there's very little left for imagination, and what is not there in ICDR is done as per industry standards or through market practice. Cover pages shall be of adequate thickness, and the front and inside cover page should be blank. It should contain the following details: letter of offer or red herring, self prospectus, whatever it is. What is the type of issue? It is a book build or is it a fixed price? All of this has to come out in the offer document. Names of the promoter, nature, number of price of secures. All of this you will be able to see. All of this, all of this you will be able to see here. थोड़ा इसको बड़ा कर देते हैं. ठीक है? So yeah. See, if you are able to see, आप यहाँ पे देख लो. So this is a DRHP. तो यहाँ पे ये all the number of shares and all that has not been fixed yet. But yeah, so you'll be able to see that in the RHP once you एक बार वो करके देखे क्या. You guys want to see a final offer document or should we let it go? Should we continue? आप लोग खुद देख लोगे. देख लोगे आप लोग, or do you want me to show where the number of shares and everything is? Sorry?
We can check, sir.
You can check. Great. So so that is all that is there in the offer document. Then what happens is that the market, like I said, SEBI will go through the offer document, and then each and every disclosure is verified by. Great, everyone. Okay. So each and every disclosure that you have made under ICDR will be verified by SEBI. The company has to make an application to a stock exchange for floating its initial issue also. So there are two applications. One is for a in principle approval for listing in the stock exchange. Second, that you want to float the initial public offering through initial public offering in the market. That's another application that you have to make to the stock exchanges. Then so when will SEBI reject the offer document during a confidential filing? So if the ultimate promoters of the issuer are unidentifiable, right? The purpose for which the funds are being raised is vague. The business model of the issuer is exaggerated, complex, or misleading, and investors may be unable to assess the risk associated with the business model. There is a sudden spurt in business before filing of the draft offer document, and replies to clarification sought are not satisfactory. Outstanding litigation that is so major that the issuer's survival is dependent on the outcome of the pending litigation. So before an IPO opens to the public, that company endeavors to create this is a road show. So before a IPO opens, so there are road shows and all. So where you guys would have seen that, how many of you stay in Mumbai? Mumbai, any city that you stay, have you ever seen those huge hoardings wherein IPO of a company is advertised. Has anybody seen those hoardings? Anyone? Yes, Raghav, correct. So that is what, like, that's an element of roadshow and publicity actually. So you're basically publicizing the offer, that this is what the offer is all about. These many shares are available. This is the face value. This is the market price and all of that. So over a period of 2 weeks, the executives and staff of the company will advertise the IPO process across the country. This is a marketing and advertising tactic. The key highlights of the company are shared with various people, including business analysts and fund managers. The executives adopt various user-friendly measures like question answer sessions, multimedia presentations, group meetings, online virtual roadshows, and so on for a roadshow. Then the IPO is priced. How is it priced? There are two ways to price it. Determine the price of securities or shares in an IPO. One is it is a fixed price, or it can be a book building offer. It can be a book build issue, right? So in case of fixed offer price, the price of company stocks is announced in advance. So is any CS or CA present over here? Anyone? Because I'm the part about price discovery is where also I'm not very fluent with, because that is where lawyers are usually not involved. So price discovery is Sarvesh. Could you please tell us? Do you have an idea how this price discovery is done? How that formula is arrived upon? Can you have, if you do know, can you share it with us? अगर नहीं है तो चलेगा, but if you can, because it is usually a lot of things are taken into consideration: the credit rating report, last 3 years financial statements, all of those things. Then there is a formula that you arrive upon. Then you determine a price. That is the fixed price offering. If you're looking at a book building offering, a price range of 20% is announced. Within this, like following which investors can place their bids within the price bracket, right? So itna, like, not complicating things anymore. Book build issue is where basically you set a price band that that we are planning to price our securities between 0 to 20, for an instance, right? So the investors, the retail investors, can sort of they can even place a bid. I think that if I think that it should be 5 rupees, or maybe Sarvesh thinks it should be 11 rupees, or Manyata thinks it should be 12 rupees, whatever it is. So, but it has to be within that price band only. So so that is a book build. So you are actually so the price of the security is in fact determined by the market forces of supply and demand. Like based on what is the popularity of your company. Like Zomato, for instance. Right. So Zomato it's everybody knew it's a food delivery company. It was already a household name before it even went for an IPO. Correct. So that is why, like, like if you do a book build issue, it will be 100% book build issue or whatever it is. So there is a price range which is set, price band. Then उसमें determine किया जाता है, right? एक base price, एक floor price होता है, and minimum. So it also, like, the minimum number of shares to be purchased alongside the company also provides an IPO floor price, which is the minimum bidding price, and the IPO cap price, which is the highest bidding price, right? So uske securities ke liye, what is the floor price for that is set by the company. What is the maximum price for bidding, that is also set by the company. So then how do you place a bid as a retail investor? How do you subscribe to a IPO? This is not important from a issuer perspective, but this is important if you are somebody who wants to trade, who wants to become a retail investor. There is something called a ASBA mechanism. How many of you here use iMobile, ICICI Bank, Kotak, this thing, Kotak Mahindra Bank? How many of you use that? Does anybody here use that? So the reason I'm asking you is that I'll just show it to you. In most, in most banking apps these days, you have a ASBA mechanism. Just a second. Why can't I see mine? Okay, I'm not able to. Earlier it used to show on my this thing. invest and insure. Not able to see ASBA right now, but yeah, it's pretty much there. So what happens is that you place a bid. If you want to subscribe to an IPO, you basically place a bid through the application supported by blocked amount mechanism, which is very simple. So allotment में क्या होता है ना? It's basically done on a first come first serve basis kind of a thing, right? So doesn't mean that you have made a successful bid, doesn't imply that you will be allotted a share for that company. So earlier on, what used to happen, this used to happen very manually and everything. So a lot of times, people were duped and everything. They lost their money during the bidding process and everything. So basically, ASBA is a mechanism where you place a bid, right? So that money. So let's say you're placing a bid for worth rupees 500 or whatever it is. So that money is debited from your, it is debited from your bank account, and it is placed in a third party bank account. So it will only be credited to the issuer company after you have been successfully allotted a security, not before that. So you are making a bid using this ASBA. So you are so 500 rupees will be debited from your account, but it will not, at that point, it will not be credited to the issuing company. It will only be credited after a successful allotment has been made to you. Yes, DMAT is okay. Ruch, DMAT is the mode how you hold your securities, right? You trade through a DMAT account. So earlier on, you had this physical share certificates. Later on, it has been dematerialized. You have an electronic record of the share certificate which is a proof of ownership of the share that you hold, right? So, why are you asking DMAT right now? As in, DMAT account is important for trading. It is like a safe. It is for safekeeping of your shares.
So here in this slide, you have bifurcated this in two parts, online and offline mode. So I got confused.
Yeah.
Because...
Oh, okay. So how to? So DMAT is not about. So here we are talking about how do you make a bid? Like how do you subscribe to the IPO? DMAT account comes into picture when you finally allotted a security, and how are you holding it? Are you holding it in physical form or are you holding it in an electronic form? That is what DMAT is all about.
Okay, sir. So
okay.
To apply, there are two modes, online and offline.
Correct. So you can, basically approach your stockbroker, or if you have a DMAT account, you can do it directly, or you can do it through a stockbroker. That is an offline thing, right? So to be very honest right now, technically it's all online right now, but the difference lies in who is the person who is behind everything. How are you doing it, right? If you're doing it directly through yourself, you're using ASBA and all of those mechanisms, and you're placing bids yourself, then you are operating your DMAT account yourself, then it's completely online. Offline, if you are there are still you can still ask for a physical share certificate today. ऐसा नहीं है कि all share certificates will be in electronic mode. You can still ask for a physical share certificate.
Understood, sir.
Right. Yes, so right. So that is how you place a bid using ASBA mechanism. Then if you want to do it in an offline mode kind of a thing, then like I said, you approach a stockbroker or somebody, they will open a DMAT account for you. Then you obtain an application form, you fill it up, you give it to the stockbroker. He will in turn go and submit it on the website of the stock exchange, and then you place bid through him. So like I said, it's primitive. It used to happen before, not now. So once you successfully placed a bid, if you are lucky enough, you will get depending on what is the demand for the IPO that you're subscribing to. For example, Zomato, Zomato did, I think we can safely say did well, right? So I mean, that is what at least some people think. But yeah, so once the IPO is finalized, the company along with the underwriters will determine the number of shares to be allotted to each investors. Who is an underwriter? Can anybody tell me? An underwriter is also an intermediary to an offer, but who is an underwriter? What is his option? What is his function? Anyone? An underwriter is, yes, somebody. Yes, so assesses the risk in the market. Yes, they check the price. They also take risk of the offer. they are professional risk takers. They will subscribe, like, they underwrite the entire offer, saying that, maybe if there is a under subscription or there is a over subscription, they'll help you with that. Mostly during under subscription, right? So that is where underwriters come in. So once the price is finalized, the company along with the underwriters will determine the number of shares to be allotted to each investor. In the case of oversubscription, partial allotments will be made. The IPO stocks are usually allotted to bidders within 10 working days of the last bidding date. Now, once your allotment is complete, the company will endeavor to prevent company insiders or internal investors from participating. Yes, Shivan's correct. By guaranteeing, they are basically there to back you up. Like, if it partial as on a pro rata basis, pro rata, not exactly. Partial allotment will be like, let's say you have requested, like you want 2 shares, you will be allotted 1. If there is a oversubscription, right? Joey, does that answer? Okay. So yeah, so the company will endeavor to prevent company insiders or internal investors from participating in the IPO process. Remember, the company insiders trading on their own shares can disrupt the demand and supply of the offer. Yes, they get a commission. They actually get a professional fees. They don't get a commission as such. They get a professional fees, which can be also no, but like merchant bankers, they don't get a commission of the offer. They get a professional fees actually. Like their revenue, their consideration is fixed, that they will get this much amount for underwriting the entire issue. And of course, it has to be a substantial amount. Otherwise, why will they underwrite the issue? So yeah. So then in terms of legal framework, what you have to look at is SEBI ICDR and LODR regulations. The Companies Act, sort of, just a second. The Companies Act read along with the rules, Securities Contract Regulation, SCRR and SCRR rules, as well as foreign investment laws applicable in India. That would depend on what kind of offer that you're going for. Are you also opening your offer, outside of India to foreign investors and all of that? So broadly, this is all that the IPO process is all about from end to end. Did I miss anything? Right. Right. So this is broadly the IPO process. I know somebody had a doubt. Manyata had a doubt, right? So who was asking about? Who was asking on the slide number 9? I missed 9. I think I skipped on purpose, right? It's not. This is not. I'm really sorry. This is not important for us. I think Arushi, were you asking about the different agreements? Was it you? Arushi, was it you who was asking about escrow and syndicate and all of those?
Yes, I guess it was Arushi only who was asking.
Okay. If you were, there is this handbook on listing by Cyril Amarchand. This will answer all your questions. I can briefly discuss it over here. Right? Issue agreement. Issue agreement is entered among by the BRLMs and the issuing company prior to the filing of the DRHP with SEBI. It sets out, amongst other things, the roles and responsibilities of BRLMs, conditions precedent, representations and warranties from the issuer, and BRLMs, details of the indemnity provided by the issuer, and obligations of termination of the BRLM's engagement. Right. So an issue agreement is basically entered into by the merchant bankers, between the merchant bankers and the issuing company. What is an escrow agreement? Escrow agreement sets out arrangement for collection of application bid amount for a banker investors. This agreement is entered into among the issuer, the BRLMs, the syndicate members, the escrow collection bank, and the registrar and share transfer agent. This agreement also provides for arrangement by which funds in the escrow accounts are transferred to the refund account or public issue account. What is the syndicate agreement? Sets out obligations between all the BRLMs and the rest of the syndicate. By syndicate, you mean all the people. Like it will even like all the BRLMs, the share transfer registrar agent, any other intermediate self-certified banks, everybody, banker to the issue, everybody. That is the syndicate that is working on the offer. What is an underwriting agreement? It is entered into amongst the issuer and the selling shareholders and the underwriters. So, Arushi, if you want, I can send this to you. Okay, Arushi, I can, if you want, I can, this is available. You can just go and type Cyril Amarchand primer on listing in India. This has been look for the second edition. And this will answer a lot of your questions. It's very simple and it's written in very, very simple language, and most of your queries will be answered here if you want to go through it. Okay. I'll send this to Komal also so that you can refer to this. And okay, Manyata had a doubt. Kya tha wo? Manyata, what was your doubt? Paid up capital. ये वाला था क्या? This is what you were asking. Is this what you are asking?
Yeah, she wanted to know the definition of paid up capital, the part you have
Okay.
highlighted on the slide.
Okay, sure. Okay, sure. I'll just answer that quickly. Komal, would you like to have the pop quiz now? And what do you want to do?
Yeah, we'll discuss
And then
the exercise and then we can
have the pop quiz. Okay, just give me 2 minutes. I'll be back. I'll just
Okay,
drink some
then
water and
we'll
come back.
have the pop quiz. Yeah, okay,
हाँ.
then we'll have the pop quiz till then.
ठीक है,
You can.
Okay.
So everyone, I would be posting the link in the chat box for the pop quiz for today. Again, our rules remain same. You have 3 minutes and then the first 3 responses get your scores in the weekly marks. Okay, so the link is there in your chat box and your 3 minutes starts from now. So quickly go and attempt the pop quiz. Be quick. We've not received even 1 response yet. Please be quick. And once you're done, you can type a yes in the chat box. Okay, so Sarvesh was the first one to complete. Pragati rather. Good. Done. Okay, you can even type out your scores in the chat box. Tanu has scored a 15. That's very good. Darshi has also scored a 15. Harsha, you've got a 10. That's okay. Most of you have scored a 10. It's okay, guys. Even if you miss out on a question, that's okay. We all are here to learn. And last 1 minute, and then I would be closing the responses. Most of you are still left to complete. Very few responses. Please be quick. Okay. So last 15 seconds, guys.
I think Manyata has left. Can you check once, Komal? She's not able to see her.
Yeah, she's not there right now. Maybe there's some
Okay.
network issue. She may join.
Okay, let her come.
Okay, guys, I'm closing the responses to the form. And I would be, in the meanwhile, even posting the scores link in the chat box.
But which question did everybody miss out on? That is what I'm curious to know. Arushi,
I think, sir, issue.
which one?
The question regarding regulation, which regulation is applicable, I think.
So promoter one.
The promoter one.
Just a second. I'm just opening the quiz right now. Hmm.
Most
Acha,
of
this
them,
I can't
most
see.
of them have Sarthak missed out on the promoter one.
But that was very okay. That was, I think, that was a very straightforward question. Okay, but I hope. Did you get the answer? And does the answer make sense to you? Is what is more important. All of you got confused between LODR and okay, Harsha. No worries. Okay, you got the answer. Okay. Okay, then I will just move on to discuss the assignment. Oh God. Just share my screen. Yeah. So the first exercise is that SK Steel wishes to set up a new steel plant in Nagpur, Maharashtra, and is looking to raise rupees 1200 crores through an IPO for the said purpose. It has filed a DRHP with SEBI and stock exchanges, and DRHP states that company will use 800 crores for expansion and 400 crores raised to IPO for general corporate purposes. State whether the objection can be raised by SEBI for utilization of funds mentioned in the DRHP. Quote the relevant provision. Okay. Mr. Pratik applied for the IPO of Max Grow Limited for 100 equity shares. He did not get the allotment and the refund has been initiated by the company, but he has not received the refund amount within the stipulated time. Suggest what remedies are available to Mr. Pratik in this scenario. Okay. So basically, he made a allotment and refund has been initiated. But the hint here is that you'll have to do a bit of research on the ASBA mechanism, which is application supported by blocked amount. Here, pretty much the answer is very evident. But what you need to research in terms of research, you need to figure out which rule, which regulation would be applicable with the specific regulation for rejection. We know what are the rejection criteria, but you just need to figure out which regulation. Then raising of funds through an IPO. GetRight Fintech Private Limited is engaged in the business of providing technologies to financial market intermediaries such as brokers, PMS service providers, etc. The company has been running a profitable business for the last 5 years, which with the last 2 years being highly profitable. The company is now looking to get into allied spheres such as providing technological help to banks, financial institutions, NBFCs, and mutual fund companies. The expansion will require securing a significant amount of funds. If GetRight decides to source the money from a public issue, what is the first step it will need to take? What are the different kinds of securities which can be offered to the public? Mr. Brett is a GetRight director of GetRight and also a director of on the board of Twilight Limited, against whom proceeding for debarring Twilight from capital market is pending before SEBI. Analyze the situation and determine whether GetRight is eligible to raise funds through the IPO or not. Support your answers with proper reasons. Now, to answer this question, remember what we are discussing about in terms of due diligence certificates and standard certificates. Do you guys remember that discussion?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So that is the hint that you have to take and answer that question from that angle. Then become an analyst and expand your reach. Analyze reasons behind failure of the Paytm IPO. Post your thoughts on LinkedIn. Tag Glossico, Ramanuj, Abhyuday, Komal ma'am, Yash, Jantika ma'am, Sapna, Sneha, Komal, and Shikhar for a wider reach. That is the exercise all about. Komal, I can't hear you. Hello.
Yes, Sarthak, we can move on to the feedback.
Yeah.
Sarthak, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm just opening this thing. Opening that.
So guys, I hope you will be able to attempt this week's exercise. Okay, so Rakshan and Pragati are clear on this. What about others? Great. That's nice. So
So
the
the
concepts
last
are clear. That's very good.
Okay, so I'll try. Hare Nimisha, you will be able to do it. We are confident. Just a second. So what we are saying is, so I think the last exercise, is my screen visible or do I need to share it? Share it quickly. Yeah. So last week, I'll just quickly plug in my laptop. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. So have you all submitted your last week's assignments? Because in the poll, I could see many of you are yet to submit.
Okay, so you have to draft a term sheet. Got it. Okay. Let's see. Raghav, I'm going to use your document. Okay. Raghav, could you just this particular part does not make a bit of sense. Promoters and ESOP plan shall have a monthly vesting spread over 3 years. Could you please tell me what exactly were you intending to convey? Raghav, are you there?
Yeah, sir, I'm there, sir.
Yeah,
Later realized that this was not needed once I submitted.
but yeah, I just want to understand what was your intention.
Basically, to give them benefit so that once they're leaving, there is some incentive to stay.
Okay, so now you have you understood later on that it's not needed. Can you please tell us why you thought that it's not needed anymore?
Because
Yes,
ESOP plan, there is not, it's not relevant actually.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Just wanted to understand that. So this will be deleted. You don't need this. Otherwise, I'm happy with the way that you have brought it out, as in in terms of presentation and all, this is very good. This looks, and also remember one thing, all of you, when working on things like term sheets, requisition list, and everything, like I said, time and again, presentation is also important. Go for a landscape mode, right? It makes it, makes your document easier to read, especially in terms of when you're looking at something like this, right? So if you do it landscape and you increase the size of all of this, looks nice, right? Mm. Yeah, Raghav, just one thing. How is the exit? Okay, so this is, if I'm not wrong, then this is a term sheet which will again be. Then you plan to like draft a MOU which will contain all binding terms, correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, then that's okay. In that question, that's okay. Yeah, other than the yeah, somebody saying something.
Yes, Sapurna here. Sir, I had a doubt that before starting with the term sheet, the actual clauses of the term sheet, can we write in the introduction that the confidentiality clause is something which will be binding?
In the introduction itself of what, of the MOU or the term sheet?
So the term sheet where we'll be introducing the parties.
Yes, but you need to have a what is a term sheet? It is an indicative reference. It is an indicative, set of conditions that you are willing to negotiate right now, correct? Which you will again sort of enter into a binding MOU or an agreement, whatever, to solidify that, correct? So in terms of, so regardless whether or not, so what you will write is that this term sheet is confidential. Again, you can of course keep a disclaimer, but anyways, you should also have a clause like this, because whether or not, my point being that whether or not you write this clause here, you are anyways going to write that clause in the MOU.
Yes, sir.
So I think what you are saying is more of a disclaimer kind of a thing that you will put in the term sheet that this has been drafted only for the parties engaged in negotiations, whatever it is. You will give that disclaimer and should not be circulated beyond. That's fine. You can keep that general disclaimer, but it's nice to have a confidentiality clause like that.
No, so the confidentiality clause, what I meant to say, that confidentiality clause is supposed to be like, as per the exercise, it's supposed to be there. But while writing that header part of the term sheet, where we'll be writing that so and so party is the investor and so party is the company and the investor, and this term sheet is per se non-binding. But some of the clauses, such as like I wrote in my exercise, my assignment, that the confidentiality clause, which is the third clause, shall be binding. So is this correct, or
where is your assignment?
I haven't submitted it yet.
Can you share your screen right now? Is it possible for me to look, or
yes, I'll try.
Just quickly share your screen and we'll like take a look at that in 2 minutes. Komal, is that okay if she shares her screen just for 2 seconds?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen. Just quickly share your screen. And
Yes, so this is. So can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Can you, which part are you talking about? Which one?
So this one,
is
non-binding, except for clause 3, which will be legally binding on the parties.
No, but how can you write like that? As in terms of, so my first question to you is that, is a term sheet legally binding? Can it be legally binding?
No, sir, it's not. But like
No.
you thought in the previous session, that some of the clauses can be written that they can be legally binding if it is written in the.
Okay, that is one way of looking at it. Also, another way of looking at it is that in so the kind of term sheet that you are talking about, it is actually very detailed to that extent, and there are times, given the paucity of time, parties go ahead with a deal or a negotiation only on the basis of the term sheet. They don't even sign an MOU because the term sheet is so well drafted, right? It is so well drafted that it will have a binding nature. But I don't think so. I don't think that this should be like this. You should always, I mean, you cannot say that you should not write something like that. That's my opinion.
Okay, all right. So thank you.
Right, that's my opinion, because doesn't make sense like that.
Yes, sir, sure. Thank you.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Is my screen visible? No, I think I stopped sharing my screen. So yeah, other than that, I'm fine with it. Raghav, good work actually.
Yeah, this
This
exercise I
is
had
an
no idea about, to be honest. The legal
this
opinion.
is an email opinion or
Legal opinion.
no? So was this opinion supposed to be sent out on email or like on? Acha, okay, let it go. Okay, at the very outside, what I want to tell you, Raghav, is that okay, you have written a very crisp opinion, but in terms of writing an opinion, it has to be fleshed out a bit more. So what I request you to do is, are you following any template which has been given to you, or how did you do this?
I started following template long back, and since then I'm following this pattern only.
Okay, so broadly speaking, this is okay. What you're doing here is you have given a brief like background. What is missing here is that the legal framework that you should have mentioned. You are talking about all of this as if the other person has a very clear idea to what are you talking about. I mean, he may or he may not have, but as legal counsels, it is our duty that. So how did you arrive at this conclusion? Right, all of this is the context, I understand, but when you're saying this over here, yes, this liability is tenable. How did you arrive to this conclusion? What is the law that you're referring to? Okay, so additionally, you should cross reference it to the point of law so that it makes sense.
Okay.
Right, then we're happy to provide yeah, so that is what's missing over here. Then otherwise you have defined the terms and everything.
Just to add one thing, they were actually asked to provide a advice. A proper legal opinion was not asked. It was just an advice.
Oh, so got it. Then that's okay. So by that thing, it's okay. But even then, you should just my advice to you would be, Raghav, that refer to the cross-reference to the point of law. What is the legal framework? How did you, if you're saying yes, based on what? Right? What is your legal analysis? Is that does that make sense, Raghav?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Otherwise, you have done a good job. Nothing more from my end. Just always keep on defining terms before you use them. Maintain continuity and uniformity in presentation. Also, this text should be always justified for making better presentation. Otherwise, it's a good draft. These are my general comments for everyone. That's it.
Sir, I think with our template for Dreamcatcher, there is this thing which we have to follow, that it should be left aligned. So that is why.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Are left aligned.
Okay, then I didn't know that. Okay, fine. You can follow a left alignment, but just, I mean, I always, whenever I sit and draft, I always do it justified. But that's okay. I mean, there is no one correct way of doing anything. Just
Since
looks better
we have two law firms, like one is Dreamcatcher and one is Shadowmaster. So we have kept the font style and alignment for both the firms different.
Oh, okay.
Just to make a house style for that law firm.
Acha, then that makes sense. Okay, fine.
Sir, hello?
Yeah, Yeah, go
Sir,
on.
I have a doubt in second exercise. So I'm a little unsure about my legal opinion. Could you please specify what is the correct or definite answer to that legal opinion?
Just same.
Which one? This one which we are discussing?
Yeah, second exercise, legal opinion.
Specific
Uh,
indemnity was needed.
Yes,
That
sir.
one.
Actually, it was very confusing. That is why I was also not able to submit my assignment.
Yeah,
got it.
I just tried. I had no idea about it.
Can I request you something, both of you? Can I drop you an email on this later on? I can answer that. But can I just drop an email?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have my email IDs, Joey, Raghav, all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just right now, drop me an email so that it stays on top of my mind, and I'll send you an answer sometime by tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Will that be okay?
Yeah,
Sure,
we'll
sir,
also
sure.
get feedback on this assignment. I think that will also contain the answer, I guess.
Yes, so
sorry.
Sarthak, you can even share that with me and Sneha. So we can,
Acha, okay.
so all the students can have a look at it.
Great, I can do that. So I'll mark up that document. I'll mark up Raghav's document, and I'll send it to either like both of you, and you can share it with everyone.
Yes, and that would work.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all from my end, guys. If you have any further questions, please reach out to me on email.
Quickly, I'll launch the feedback poll. Everyone, please participate.
My pleasure, guys. Nimisha, Alifia, Mansi, Ruchir, always a pleasure teaching you guys. Well, this is one of my favorite classes, actually.
Thank you for participating in the poll. And one more small announcement that coming Monday, that is 27th of December, we will not be having any class since it's, holiday season and most of you are traveling somewhere or have some plans. So we won't be scheduling a class on 27th. Okay, guys. So thank you for attending and thank you, Sarthak, for such a wonderful session today. We all have learned a lot about IPO. So thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. Always a pleasure. In case I don't meet you guys, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, unless I have another class with you recently.
Yes, guys. Happy New Year to all of you and a very Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year, guys, and a Merry Christmas.
Okay, so
Take
see
care,
you all
everyone.
in the
Good night.
next class. Thank you.
Okay. Good night.